Hello from Moscow, Kevin Owen here at RTHQ with you this hour. Thank you for checking in. So as you heard, sad story to start again. There's been another gruesome discovery in Canada. 182 unmarked Indigenous graves have been found close to a former Catholic school in the province of British Columbia. It's prompted the Prime Minister to ask Pope Francis to make amends over the Church's historic role in the forced assimilation of the community. The discoveries have brought shame on the country's Canada Day.
You learn not to cry anymore. You just get harder. And yeah, you learn to shut down.
Every day you were in constant fear that your hope was that it wasn't you today that was going to be the target, the victim.
It was a genocide. And you look at the whole point of the residential school was to take the Indian out of the Indian, to get rid of our language, to get rid of our culture. And children died. And it's coming out now. And but my answer to that is we are still here. We are practicing language. We practice our culture. So it did not kill us, but we are coming back. Every First Nation person is feeling the impact of the residential schools. I had my grandmother attended, my grandfather attended. Thankfully, my mother didn't have to attend, but she still feels the impacts on it on a daily basis. The Reconciliation Commission had 94 calls to action that have not been actioned to date, and they came out many years ago. I'm hoping Canada will take the initiative and start looking at those seriously, and then start working with First Nations and just be there. We need them to be there.
Let's get more on this now and speak to RT's Alex Mihailovich, who's in Canada. Hey there, thanks for coming on with us now this hour. This is the third such discovery. Many expect more are going to be found. What's the government saying that in more detail?
Well, you know, it's discovery after discovery. The latest one was on Wednesday, 182 bodies found in Cranbrook, British Columbia. This is close to a residential school. They use basically a radar that looks underground, and that's where they found these people in unmarked graves. That adds to the initial finding, which happened on May 27th in Kamloops, British Columbia, at another residential school of 215 people as young as 3 years old in unmarked graves. And then, of course, Saskatchewan, which was the biggest find so far, at 715 people. 751 people. So you add all these numbers up, as you mentioned right off the top, over 1,000 people found, but we have over 130 schools like this across Canada. The program started in the late 1800s and lasted all the way up to 1996 when the last school was closed. That's 150,000 Native children ripped out of their families' arms and put into these schools. They were forced to go to these schools. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were complicit in it. They were the ones that would take the children from their families to the schools that were run primarily by the Catholic Church at about 60%, but also Anglican and Protestant and other smaller churches across the country. The levels of abuse that we found at these schools was absolutely mind-blowing. I just have to read something for you quickly. This is a 1907 report from the Department of Indian Affairs. It was called the Bryce Report, documented 40 to 60% mortality rate in these schools, mostly of tuberculosis, and then a 90 to 100% of these children, this is unbelievable, suffered either from physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. As you can imagine, this has gone through the system and is penetrated our Native communities from coast to coast. We still have rates of 80% abuse on these First Nations because of this legacy left behind by these churches and the Canadian government, which funded all of these programs. Now, when we're talking about these unmarked graves, there's many across the country. Obviously, we know that this is something that is hurting a lot of Canadians, especially our Indigenous communities. So Canadians are demanding that the government do something about this. We did have, back in 2015, a commission that said that this was a cultural genocide. They did very little about it up to now. Now people are demanding the Prime Minister do something about it, and the Prime Minister, as well as Indigenous communities, are demanding an apology from the Catholic Church. This is Prime Minister Trudeau.
I really hope that this time it will lead towards the Pope coming onto Canadian soil and apologizing directly for the responsibility that the Catholic Church shares in this part of our history.